In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Okay, so who remembers what we talked about last time?
Absalom taking over Israel.
Okay, there was a coup. It was the beginning of the coup. Okay, and he ended up taking over Jerusalem. Okay, who was Absalom?
Son of David.
The son of David. And why is he taking over the kingdom? Because he can. So he's estranged from David. Why?
Because of his mistake, and then he ran away, and he's been there for many years, far from David.
Yeah, so first, Absalom kills Amnon, okay, his half-brother, for what? Okay, for raping his sister, Tamar, okay? And then Absalom flees, and then he stays where? No, after Absalom flees, before the coup happens, where does he go?
His grandfather.
With his grandfather. You remember what it was called? The land starts with a G. Geshur. Yeah. And then he stays there for how long? 3. We're close. Okay, and then what happens after 3 years?
David brings him back.
Okay, David brings him back, and then what?
Forgives him.
Does he forgive him?
Well,
So what happens when he comes back?
he's there, but he's not like in the house of
Yeah, so actually David says, I don't want to see him, right? He can come back and live in Israel, but I don't want to see him. Okay, and then after, I believe, another 2 years, what happens? Absalom did what?
So then kill me, or be reconciled.
Right, kill me or be reconciled with me. But even before he had a chance to tell him, he had to burn Joab's field to get Joab's attention, so that Joab would then communicate the message to the king and set up audience with the king, and then he was able to talk to David. But that wasn't the end of it. Then what happened?
Started to try to gain favor with the people.
Yes. So he starts to gain favor with the people, trying to manipulate them, trying to make them think that he's on their side, that whatever cases that they bring, no one's going to be able to help them except him. And he starts to win the favor of the people that way. And then he starts also to kind of do things that would make him appear like grandiose, like he has chariots and horses and people walking before him, like he's an important person. And then finally, when he decides that he's going to take over the kingdom, what does he do?
He goes to the place in which David was anointed to be.
In Hebron, right? And he takes who with him?
all of David's like close leaders.
Right. The close people to the king, 200 of them. And they have no idea what's about to happen. And at the same time, Absalom has put like spies and his own people like surrounding like all over Israel. And then the moment they get the signal, they're all going to sing or say, Absalom reigns as king, okay? In order to make everybody feel like there's been a transition of power that happened. So all of that happened. And then David is forced to flee, okay? And while he's fleeing, he goes and he's mocked by different people, and he meets Ziba. Remember who's Ziba? The servant of Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth is who? Jonathan's son. And what had David done to Mephibosheth in the past?
He gave him control over all his dad's land.
Right. All his grandfather's land, Saul's land. So, Mephibosheth is lame. He can't walk. So he needs the help of others. David had compassion on him. He gave him all of Saul's land. And then he told Ziba, this man Ziba, to take care of the land and give him like the harvest of the land. Okay? And then now David meets this man Ziba. Okay? And what do we learn? What does Ziba tell David?
That Mephibosheth's trying to take over his dad's place.
Yeah, so now Mephibosheth gets the hint that now there's a revolution happening, so he's thinking, oh, I'm going to go back to Jerusalem, and maybe I'm going to be now anointed as king because, King David is no more. So he kind of capitalizes on this situation. Instead of, being compassionate to David and thankful to him, he's now trying to take his position. Okay. So now, after kind of we're in this situation where David is now in exile, he's running, and he's being pursued by Absalom. And now Absalom is going to try to come up with a plan to finally kill David. And essentially, the first step was getting him out of Jerusalem and taking his place, and the next step is killing him. Okay? So this is what we're going to start reading in chapter 17 today. Okay? And the main characters, two of the main characters we're going to read about, we met them earlier. Okay? The first one was Ahithophel, and the other one was Hushai. Okay? Who is Ahithophel?
Counselor.
He's a counselor. A counselor for who?
Well, he was the counselor for David, but
Right.
switched.
Right. So he was David's close advisor, and then now became the advisor for Absalom. And what did we say was a possible reason why he made that switch?
Bathsheba,
Was who?
his granddaughter.
Yes. So Bathsheba is Ahithophel's granddaughter. So he might have been harboring some resentment toward David because of what he did with her. And so now he's offering, he's offering this, as kind of like payback. Okay, almost to what happened. And Ahithophel advised Absalom to do something in the last chapter we read in chapter 16. What was it?
Concubine.
So he told Absalom to take David's concubines as like a sign of that he's now the king. Okay, so we're going to see now okay, so that's Ahithophel. Who's Hushai? Hushai is David's friend. Okay, and where is he now in the story?
With Absalom.
With Absalom, because David sent him back and essentially told him, be a spy, okay, and report to me what's happening to help him out. Okay. Moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, now let me choose 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue David tonight. I will come upon him while he is weary and weak, and make him afraid, and all the people who are with him will flee, and I will strike only the king. Then I will bring back all the people to you. When all return except the man whom you seek, all the people will be at peace. Okay, so Ahithophel is now, has this plan. Remember, Ahithophel has never been wrong. He has this reputation. He's never been wrong, and he's now giving this advice to Absalom. And of course, his expectation is Absalom is going to do what it is that he says. And he presents this plan, and actually the plan is very good. It's a very good plan. It'll be a very effective plan, and it's focusing on the real problem in the mind of Absalom, which is King David. We're trying to kill King David, because once King David is out of the picture, then, then things are going to calm down for him, essentially. So it's a very surgical plan. He says, we're going to take some men, 12,000 men, okay? So it's not like, a gigantic force, but at the same time, it's 12,000 men only to kill one man, okay? So it's definitely sufficient, okay? Also, he knows that David doesn't have nearly that many people with him, okay? He doesn't have his army, he doesn't have things, and he's very disorganized. This exile has just happened, so it's not like he's organized himself yet. Also, the other thing he says is, we attack tonight. In the end of verse 1, it says, I will arise and pursue David tonight. Meaning, don't give David a chance to become organized. Let's attack him quickly before he's organized, when he's not expecting it, and then we will have a higher chance of success. And also, again, the focus was only on David. He wasn't trying to wipe out anyone else. He wasn't trying to kill all the people that were with David. He just wants to kill David. So this is kind of like the philosophy behind Ahithophel's plan. Send 12,000 men to kill one man and act immediately. Okay? So, now we're going to see, what does Hushai say? And the saying pleased Absalom and all the elders of Israel. Then Absalom said, now call Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear what he says too. And when Hushai came to Absalom, Absalom spoke to him, saying, Ahithophel has spoken in this manner. Shall we do as he says? If not, speak up. Okay, so he's giving Hushai now a chance to kind of confirm what it is that Ahithophel has said, or to present something else. Now, maybe even from the perspective of Ahithophel, He's not necessarily used to other people coming and giving advice, because he's always used that whatever it is he says is what goes. Okay, but now here, maybe that's the way that David dealt with him, perhaps, but here Absalom is now seeking the advice of more people. So remember, Hushai is a spy. Okay, so Hushai now, very intelligently, he's going to present a plan that's going to appear to Absalom to be a good plan, but at the same time, he knows that the plan is going to be a destructive one, that is going to fail. Okay, so what does he say? Hushai said to Absalom, "The advice that Ahithophel has given is not good at this time. For, said Hushai, you know your father and his men, that they are mighty men, and they are enraged in their minds like a bear robbed of her cubs in the field. And your father is a man of war and will not camp with the people." Okay, so what is he saying?
Saying that David will be ready.
David will be ready. Okay, what else?
He shouldn't take the counsel of Ahithophel.
Okay, he shouldn't take the counsel of Ahithophel. What else about the plan? Yeah, it's not a good plan, but specifically, why is he saying it's not a good plan?
Because David won't be with the people.
So that's another thing. David's not going to be with the people. You might go to the camp where everybody is, but don't expect to find David there, because he is very crafty. He's a warrior. He knows what to do and what not to do. He also says that they are enraged in their minds, and they are like a bear robbed of her cubs. So they're saying they want the kingdom back. Like this is not like this isn't just a regular war for them. Like in your case, you're trying to take over the kingdom, but in their case, they're trying to restore to themselves the kingdom, and he's enraged in his mind. So don't underestimate his power, his strength, his craftiness. You know, you're not going to find him easily. So he's essentially attacking what Ahithophel is saying in that this is not going to be like a surgical strike and you're in and you're out. You have to be careful about what it is that you do. And when you listen to him, it sounds very reasonable. Like everything he says sounds right. Okay, so what does he propose? Surely by now he is hidden in some pit or in some other place, and it will be when some of them are overthrown at the first, that whoever hears it will say, there is a slaughter among the people who follow Absalom. And even he who is valiant, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will melt completely. For all Israel knows that your father is a mighty man, and those who are with him are valiant men. Okay, so what is Hushai saying now?
He's going to be hidden somewhere, and when the attack begins, that word would get back to David, wherever he is in hiding, and that his heart will melt completely, so they become discouraged.
Well, so when it's talking about the people getting discouraged, he's not talking about David. He's talking about Absalom's people, the Israelites, and his followers. He's saying when the battle starts, then there's going to be some casualties from Absalom's side. Okay, but because David has such a reputation that people are afraid of him, right? So he says when people start hearing that there's casualties, they're going to automatically assume that David is slaughtering Absalom's people, and they're going to become afraid, and their hearts are going to melt, right? So it says, he is hidden in some pit, and it will be when some of them are overthrown. Them means who? Them means Absalom's men. When some of them are overthrown at the first, that whoever hears it will say, there is a slaughter among the people who follow Absalom. Meaning the people who follow Absalom are being slaughtered. Even though it might not be a slaughter, but there's going to be some casualties. And so he's again trying to amplify the idea of David's reputation. David has such a good reputation, that he's such a powerful warrior, that anything he does, the people are going to interpret it like he's just, an all-out victory, and that's going to cause the people to lose heart. The soldiers who are fighting with Absalom. Okay? Therefore, I advise that all Israel be fully gathered to you. So now this is up until that point, he was criticizing Ahithophel's plan. And now he's going to say, okay, here's my plan. This is what I think. In light of all these facts that I've just said, here's what my plan is. Therefore, I advise that all Israel be fully gathered to you, from Dan to Beersheba, like the sand that is by the sea for multitude, and that you go to battle in person. So we will come upon him in some place where he may be found, and we will fall on him as the dew falls on the ground. And of him and all the men who are with him there shall not be left so much as one. Moreover, if he has withdrawn into a city, then all Israel should bring ropes to that city, and we will pull it into the river until there is not one small stone found there. Okay? So, what are the characteristics of this plan?
He wants to wipe out David and everybody there.
Right, so that's one difference. One difference, instead of just going in, our goal is to kill David, our goal is to wipe out everybody. Okay? The entire army of people, we're just going to destroy them all. Okay? What else?
He's advising that Absalom himself is there in person.
Yes, so he's saying Absalom himself, this is how important this battle is. Absalom himself has to go. Okay? Which of course gives an opportunity for him to be vulnerable. Right? Because if Absalom is in the war, now he can be easily killed. Right? So this is all in Hushai's mind, like as he's suggesting this. What else is he saying?
He's distracting him from,
Sorry, he's distracting what?
he's distracting him from David.
He's distracting Absalom?
Yeah. Because he's gonna war against all the people.
Yeah, so he has many targets now, instead of just having the one target. Good. Somebody says something over here.
I was saying that he was going to bring all of the city of Israel.
Yes, everyone. So instead of just 12,000 men, he's now talking about a massive war that includes the entire army of Israel. And that will actually buy time for David. Because to get 12,000 men together and to go to the place is going to obviously take less time than to mobilize the entire army of Israel and then go. So what he's doing is he's buying David time. Whereas Ahithophel wanted to strike tonight, Hushai's plan, it was impossible to strike tonight. Like, it was going to take a long time to do this. So in every aspect of Hushai's plan, he's countering it and he's saying the opposite. Because he knows, in Ahithophel's plan. He knows that Ahithophel's plan is good. Right? So instead of taking 12,000, take everybody. Instead of just targeting David, target everybody. Instead of going tonight, make the plan so complicated that there's no way you can do it tonight. And all of that gives David more time. But at the same time, he's presenting it in a way that would be convincing to Absalom. He's making him think, you really need all those people because David is such a powerful warrior. You really need all those people. Okay? So he's doing it in a very clever way. And we'll see actually what the Bible says is that this was God's plan. Like, God is intervening in this. We'll see how. So Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the advice of Hushai the Archite is better than the advice of Ahithophel. Right? So it wasn't just Absalom himself who made this decision. He's saying all the men of Israel, when they heard this plan, they're like, yeah, this plan is even better because it's more firepower, it's more aggressive, it's bigger, right? And what's better, bigger is better, right? Then it says what? For the Lord had purposed to defeat the good advice of Ahithophel to the intent that the Lord might bring disaster on Absalom. So see that? It's a very important part. That God is actually the one who architected this plan, this Hushai's plan, and made the people to agree that this is a good plan, because he wanted the people to go after this plan instead of the other one. Then Hushai said to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests. Who are these priests, remember?
They left them behind in Jerusalem.
Yeah, so initially, these priests were going to go with David into exile. And they were bringing the Ark of the Covenant. And David told them what? Take it back, why?
God is with you.
Yeah, God is with me. I don't need to bring the Ark of the Covenant with me. If God wants me to succeed, then I'm going to be back in Jerusalem and I'm going to see the Ark of the Covenant again. But I don't need to take it with me. Okay. It's actually, David learned a big lesson from previously. Remember what happened with David previously? When he was moving the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. And that's when Uzzah put his hand out and touched it and it was falling, and David became angry at God because of what he allowed to happen. Right now he has a different understanding. The Ark of the Covenant is not like a trophy, and it's not just a trinket of good luck. Okay? He doesn't have to take it with him to be successful. God is with him all the time. Actually, God told him this. If you remember in the chapter when we were reading where David wanted to build the temple, okay, what was one of the reasons that God told David when he said, I didn't ask you to build me a temple? What was one of the reasons that God told David that he didn't need the temple? That he didn't need him to build the temple?
He's always been with him.
Exactly. He says, look at all the history of Israel. I've been with the people all the time, even though I didn't have a permanent place to live. Okay? A permanent temple. So David has changed, really, his mentality about the Ark of the Covenant, which is good. It's a good change. God is with him, even if the Ark of the Covenant is not. So then Hushai said to Zadok and Abiathar the priests, thus and so Ahithophel advised Absalom and the elders of Israel, and thus and so I have advised. So Hushai is telling Zadok and Abiathar, now who are also spies there with him, go and tell David. Okay, this is what has happened. Now therefore, send quickly and tell David, saying, do not spend this night in the plains of the wilderness, but speedily cross over, lest the king and all the people who are with him be swallowed up. Okay, so remember, which direction was David fleeing? Okay, so Hebron was more southwest from Jerusalem. Okay, so Hebron is where Absalom started the coup. And then he started chasing after David, walking toward Jerusalem. David fled Jerusalem, which is the capital city where he was, and he started going toward the Jordan River to the east. Okay, so now he's saying to him, Hushai is telling David, don't spend the night in the plains of the wilderness, but cross over to the other side, like cross the Jordan. It's safer for you over on the other side of the Jordan, lest the king and all the people who are with him be swallowed up. Now Jonathan and Ahimaaz stayed at Enrogel, for they dared not to be seen coming into the city. So a female servant would come and tell them, and they would go and tell the king. Okay, who are Jonathan and Ahimaaz? Okay, so Jonathan is Abiathar's son, and Ahimaaz is Zadok's son. Okay, so the two priests, they're two sons. And so these two people were like an intermediary. Okay, like Zadok and Abiathar would tell their kids, their sons, and then the sons, they would go tell this female servant, and then she would go and tell David. Okay? Or sorry, no, the other way around. The female servant would tell Jonathan and Ahimaaz, and then they would go and tell David. Nevertheless, a lad saw them and told Absalom. Okay, so somebody spotted them having this conversation and that being there in the city in Rogel, and he went and reported it to Absalom. So Absalom now kind of starts to see that there's this kind of like secret spy network kind of relaying the information that's happening. But both of them went away quickly and came to a man's house in Bahurim who had a well in his court, and they went down into it. Okay, so they're hiding down in this well. Then the woman took and spread a covering over the well's mouth and spread ground grain on it, and the thing was not known. And when Absalom's servants came to the woman at the house, they said, where is Ahimaaz and Jonathan? So the woman said to them, they have gone over the water brook. And when they had searched and could not find them, they returned to Jerusalem. Does this sound familiar? Rahab. What are the similarities between this and the story of Rahab? Who is Rahab?
The harlot that lived in Jericho,
Mm-hmm.
and the two spies of Joshua.
Right. So it was a very similar situation. There was this woman living by herself. These two spies, they came. She hid them. Okay, she hid them on her roof. And when other people came and asked her about them, she said no, they went away and they went astray. So it's the same exact story here. Now it came to pass after they had departed that they came up out of the well and went and told King David and said to David, arise and cross over the water quickly, for thus has Ahithophel advised against you. So David and all the people who were with him arose and crossed over the Jordan. By morning light, not one of them was left who had not gone over the Jordan. Okay, so they successfully escaped. Now when Ahithophel saw that his advice was not followed, he saddled a donkey and arose and went home to his house, to his city. Then he put his household in order and hanged himself and died. And he was buried in his father's tomb. Okay, why would he hang himself? Okay, so one reason is he was upset because
Lost his opportunity to kill David.
okay, so you're saying he was upset because he believed that the plan was going to fail?
No, he believed that if they didn't do it his way, the other way.
So it was like an ego. So he's upset because someone didn't follow his advice. Okay, good. That's one reason. So upset because he's used to everyone following his advice and now they did not. Okay, but why else? I mean, when you look at, he put his household in order. Like, you can imagine a person who is so angry about something and who just wants to take their own life. They're not going to go put their household in order and then do it, right?
What does it mean put their household in?
Like, he's going to prepare for the people that are going to inherit his stuff. They put his household in order means he's getting ready to die, and he wants other people to inherit certain things, or to, so it's going to take time for him to do this, and it takes like mental energy to do it. Like, if you're a person who's enraged and you're going to kill yourself, you're not going to really be thinking straight enough to do that. So what's another reason why he could have killed himself?
Maybe they don't know he was in trouble because of fighting against David.
Okay, but in trouble with who?
With David, because we saw that the plan of the other person didn't succeed.
Well, the plan hasn't happened yet. He hasn't done it yet. Okay? But you're on the right track, because Ahithophel knew that the plan was going to fail. He knew that it was a ridiculous plan, and there was no way that it could succeed. So we all assumed at this point that David was going to win, and that David was going to come back. And of course, when David comes back, Ahithophel is not going to be the king's advisor anymore. Okay? So essentially, he's like, I threw my life away. I'm not going to be able to be the king's advisor anymore. David is now my enemy. And so, because I know for a fact that David is going to return, and Absalom's plan is going to fail, so I'm just going to go ahead and kill myself. This is kind of the most likely reason why he resorted to such an extreme measure. Then David went to Mahanaim, and Absalom crossed over the Jordan, he and all the men of Israel with him. So Absalom is catching up to David. And Absalom made Amasa captain of the army instead of Joab. So remember, Joab is the commander of David's army, and Joab went with David, okay, to exile. Okay, so there is now this, Absalom made this other person, Amasa, to be the new captain of the army. This Amasa was the son of a man whose name was Jithra, an Israelite, who had gone in to Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, sister of Zeruiah, Joab's mother. Okay, this means that Amasa is David's nephew. Okay, and he's Joab's cousin. So imagine, like, David's nephew is one of the people that is fighting against David. Remember the curse that God told David? What was it?
Sword will never leave your house.
Sword will never leave your house, and it will be public, right? Now you have people, even in David's own family, that are fighting against him. Not only his sons, but other members of his family. Okay, his whole family is divided. Some people are with David, some people are with Absalom. So Israel and Absalom encamped in the land of Gilead. Now it happened when David had come to Mahanaim that Shobi the son of Nahash from Rabbah of the people of Ammon, Makir the son of Amiel from Lo-debar, and Barzillai the Gileadite from Rogelim, brought beds and basins, earthen vessels and wheat, barley and flour, parched grain and beans, lentils and parched seeds, honey and curds, sheep and cheese of the herd, for David and the people who were with him to eat. For they said, the people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. Okay, so when he crossed over to the other side of the Jordan, he found help there. Like, some people there were helping David. Okay. Any questions about this chapter before we go on to the next chapter?
Is that area where he crossed over, is that still part of his kingdom?
No. This is on the other side of the Jordan. That was not part of his kingdom. So these people are actually, I'm not sure. This is very close to that land of Geshur, maybe just south of the land of Geshur. That's a good question. I'm not sure if this is actually considered. Yeah, this is actually part of his kingdom, because Barzillai the Gileadite. This is from Jabesh Gilead. Okay, this is part of Israel. Yes. Okay. Now, in this chapter, we're going to see kind of the end of what's going to happen to Absalom. And David numbered the people who were with him, and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. Then David sent out 1/3 of the people under the hand of Joab, 1/3 under the hand of Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and 1/3 under the hand of Ittai the Gittite. And the king said to the people, I also will surely go out with you myself. Okay, so why is he numbering the people and doing all this? Yeah, so he wanted to have a battle plan, right? And to kind of break up the people. So Hushai's plan worked. Hushai's plan essentially saying, we're going to take longer to prepare for this battle, giving David enough time to actually organize himself, okay? To have captains of thousands and captains of hundreds, okay? Then he broke them up into thirds. 1/3 under Joab, 1/3 under Abishai, okay, which is Joab's brother. And then who is this Ittai the Gittite? When we read about him before.
One of the men who joined David while he was in exile from Saul.
When he was about to leave to exile, right? So no, from Absalom. So this just happened in like the previous chapter. So we, at the point where Absalom is now approaching Jerusalem and David is about to flee. Okay, he's getting together the people that are loyal to him. They're going to flee with him. And then there is this man Ittai who says, I'm going to go with you. And David told him, who are you? You just got here yesterday. Like, you have no allegiance to me. You have no history with me. Like, we don't know. Like, and Ittai says, no, I'm going to go with you. He essentially told him, you don't have to come with me. Go and, live your life. And he says, no, I'm going to go with you. So, see, even David, like, even God, like, in preparation and helping David during his time of exile, he sent him this man who, according to David, was such a good resource to him that he would actually make him a general over 1/3 of his army only after knowing him for a short time. Right? This happens to us as well. We see the hand of God working in our lives when sometimes God prepares us for some catastrophe that is about to happen to us by allowing somebody or something to happen to prepare us for that thing, to prepare us for that catastrophe. Here, this man Ittai was a valuable resource to David and helped him, and was, one of the key reasons why he was able to succeed is because of his leadership. And look how much David trusted him. Maybe because he saw how faithful he was and how he was willing to go with him, even though he had no real connection or relationship with King David, and yet he was willing to go. This man was a stranger just a little while ago. And David himself is going to fight. Okay? And remember with Bathsheba, when David saw Bathsheba, he was not fighting with his army. Okay? But now in this battle, David is going out to fight with them. Everything now is on the line. But the people answered, you shall not go out, for if we flee away, they will not care about us, nor if half of us die, will they care about us. But you are worth 10,000 of us now, for you are now more help to us in the city. Then the king said to them, whatever seems best to you I will do. So the king stood beside the gate, and all the people went out by hundreds and by thousands. So people, what were the people telling him? Why didn't they want him to go?
Saying he was worth more than staying alive, I guess.
Yeah, he was definitely worth more. What else?
Stay safe.
Yes, it would help him to stay safe, but there is another reason.
They said if they ran away, they wouldn't care because David's not among them.
Right. So, for instance, let's say they get in a situation where they have to retreat. They will let them retreat. I mean, those people are not his main target, right? If there's a group of people that want to retreat, let them retreat. But if David was with them, now they're going to let them retreat. Now they're going to follow after them and kill them all. So even from a military perspective, they believe, the people, they believe that it would be better for David not to be there to kind of give them more strategic advantage and being able to move around.
But if Absalom followed Hushai's advice, which is like to annihilate everyone, they would still go after them.
Perhaps. This is just the thinking of the people at the time. Now when the king had commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, saying, deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom. And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains orders concerning Absalom. So David, despite all of this, he doesn't want Absalom to be hurt. Right? This is one thing, like even before with Amnon, like He doesn't want Amnon to be hurt. He doesn't want his children to be hurt. You remember the story of the woman from Tekoa that made up that story that Joab told her to say to David? It was a story essentially saying, one of my sons killed the other son, and now people want to kill my other son, and I want to protect him. I don't want other people to kill my son, even though he's guilty of murder. Here, also, David is the same thing exactly. Even though his son is guilty, even though his son has done all this to him, but he doesn't want him to be hurt. And this is like a parent, like a parent who endures so much from their kids, even though their kids might be disobedient, might hurt them, might betray them, might do so many things, and yet the parents have this love for kids. And this is the way God is with us. Right? Like, how many times are we betraying God all the time and sinning against God and blaspheming God and doing all these things, and yet none of these things offend God to the point where it's like, now God doesn't want us. He always wants us. He always wants us to return to him. So even here, in the midst of Absalom's sin, in the midst of Absalom's rebellion, in the midst of all of this stuff that Absalom is doing, while David does want to restore his kingdom, and David does want to stop Absalom, he doesn't want to kill Absalom. So the people went out into the field of battle against Israel, and the battle was in the woods of Ephraim. The people of Israel were overthrown there before the servants of David, and a great slaughter of 20,000 took place there that day. For the battle was scattered over the face of the whole countryside, and the woods devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. Okay, so Israel was victorious. Okay, the people of Israel, meaning Absalom's people, were overthrown by the servants of David. Okay, and it says here, what does it mean when it says the woods devoured more people that day than the sword devoured?
Terrain was tough.
Exactly. The terrain was tough. So the terrain actually worked in David's advantage. Now remember, David and his people, they're already entrenched there in that area because they arrived there first. So these attackers that are coming on them, they're the ones that are having to, find the people and kill them and so on. So David had the advantage of the terrain. Then Absalom met the servants of David. Absalom rode on a mule. The mule went under the thick boughs of a great terebinth tree, and his head caught in the terebinth. So he was left hanging between heaven and earth, and the mule which was under him went on. Okay, so Absalom had like long hair, and his hair got caught in this tree as he was going under it, and the mule just kind of left him hanging. Even that kind of, something like that to happen seems very providential. It's not a normal thing you would expect to happen to someone, especially the king-to-be, the person who wants to be the king. Now a certain man saw it and told Joab and said, I just saw Absalom hanging in a terebinth tree. So Joab said to the man who told him, You just saw him, and why did you not strike him there to the ground? I would have given you 10 shekels of silver and a belt. But the man said to Joab, Though I were to receive 1,000 shekels of silver in my hand, I would not raise my hand against the king's son, for in our hearing the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Beware lest anyone touch the young man Absalom. So this man is saying, I would not have accepted anything for killing him, nor would I ever touch him to kill him, because David commanded us explicitly not to harm him. Okay? Otherwise, I would have dealt falsely against my own life. For there is nothing hidden from the king, and you yourself would have set yourself against me. Then Joab said, I cannot linger with you. And he took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them through Absalom's heart while he was still alive in the midst of the terebinth tree. And so Joab completely ignored what David said. He's thinking completely practically. Like, we can't just leave Absalom alive. I mean, he could have even taken Absalom as a prisoner. Okay, he had that opportunity to take him as a prisoner, but he didn't. He had so much hatred toward him. And that he just struck and killed him. And that he didn't care what David thought.
He was mad because he burned his field.
Yeah, he really was attached to that field. And 10 young men who bore Joab's armor surrounded Absalom and struck and killed him. So Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing Israel, for Joab held back the people. And they took Absalom and cast him into a large pit in the woods, and lay a very large heap of stones over him. Then all Israel fled, every one to his tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and set up a pillar for himself, which is in the king's valley. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. He called the pillar after his own name, and to this day it is called Absalom's monument. So Absalom, in his life, had put up this monument. He didn't have any children, as a kind of a memorial to himself, so that people would remember him. Then Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said, Let me run now, and take the news to the king, how the Lord has avenged him of his enemies. Okay, so Ahimaaz, who's Ahimaaz, remember?
Son of the priest.
Right, the son of, I think, Zadok.
Zadok says.
Yeah.
Says.
Yes, that is what it says. Okay. Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. So he wants to be, now remember, this is how news would get communicated, right? There would be messengers. And these messengers were usually people that could run really fast and have a lot of endurance, because they would have to travel long distances in order to communicate like the news of what's happening. And it was known whenever you'd be like, you know, in your city or whatever, and you would see someone running, you know, by themselves, then you know that this is a messenger, okay? And you know that there's news coming, okay? And this is what's going to happen. So Ahimaaz says, I want to be the one to go and to tell David that this has happened. Now, Ahimaaz is like excited, like he wants, like he sees this is good news, and I want to go and say this good news to the king. He wants to tell him, look, you can go back to Jerusalem, everything's going to be back to normal, you don't have to be in exile again, and so on. And Joab said to him, you shall not take the news this day, for you shall take the news another day, but today you shall take no news, because the king's son is dead. You remember previously when people would come to David thinking that they had done David a service by killing his enemies, even when it was Saul's, like when he killed Saul's relatives and family and so on, and he would come to David saying, look, I killed these people, thinking David was going to reward him. What would happen? David would kill those people. He says, how could you just, you know, kill these people that are relatives of Saul? So here Ahimaaz has the same mindset. He's like coming to David thinking he's going to present to him good and happy news. But Joab knows better. Joab knows that if Ahimaaz goes and he says this, David might kill him. Like this isn't something that you don't want to be the one to tell David that his son is dead. Okay, so don't be so excited to do it. Then Joab said to the Cushite, he said to this man, okay, go tell the king what you've seen. Like this man is like, he can be slaughtered. He's not important. You know, you be the one to go and tell the news. Go tell the king what you have seen. So the Cushite bowed himself to Joab and ran. And Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said again to Joab, but whatever happens, please let me also run after the Cushite. So Ahimaaz still wants to go. Okay? So he says, okay, you don't want me to be the first one to tell David the news? I will run after him. So it will be two different people running, one after the other. So Joab said, why will you run, my son, since you have no news ready? But whatever happens, he said, let me run. So he said to him, run. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and outran the Cushite. So now you see, he ran like a different way, and he outran him. Now David was sitting between the two gates. And the watchman went up on the roof over the gate to the wall, lifted his eyes, and looked, there was a man running alone. Okay, so David was up there like anxious, wanting to get information of what it is that had happened. So he's there watching, okay? And this watchman, he sees this man coming running alone. Then the watchman cried out and told the king. And the king said, if he is alone, there is news in his mouth. And he came rapidly and drew near. So David knows he's going to get some news. Then the watchman saw another man running. And the watchman called to the gatekeeper and said, there is another man running alone. And the king said, he also brings news. So the watchman said, I think the running of the first is like the running of Ahimaaz the son of Zadok. And the king said, he is a good man, and comes with good news. As though somehow, because he's a good man, he's going to only bring good news. So Ahimaaz called out and said to the king, all is well. Then he bowed down with his face to the earth before the king, and said, blessed be the Lord your God, who has delivered up the men who raised their hand against my lord the king. Okay, so his statement is vague. Okay, he's just saying, thank God that, you know, we have victory. Okay, he doesn't say anything about his son. The king said, is the young man Absalom safe? Okay? Ahimaaz answered, When Joab sent the king's servant and me your servant, I saw a great tumult, but I did not know what it was about. Okay, so he didn't give him any information. All he told him was that we won the battle. But as to Absalom, I don't have any information. Okay? So he kind of spared himself. And the king said, Turn aside and stand here. So he turned aside and stood still. Just then the Cushite came. And the Cushite said, There is good news, my lord the king, for the Lord has avenged you this day of all those who rose against you. And the king said to the Cushite, Is the young man Absalom safe? So the Cushite answered, May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise against you to do harm be like that young man. Essentially saying, he is dead, and may all of your other enemies like him also be dead like him. Then the king was deeply moved, and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he went, he said thus, O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died in your place, O Absalom, my son, my son. So David was clearly, this was like a bittersweet moment for him. Even though he was to have his kingdom again and to be restored as the king, but in so doing this, now he's lost two of his sons, Amnon and Absalom, and his daughter Tamar was raped. And really, you see, like, there is just devastation in his family. Raped means that she was forced to have a sexual relationship with someone else. I'll tell you later. So the outcome of all of the curse that God had said to David, we see it completely coming to pass. Everything from A to Z. And like exactly, okay? And like we said before, like maybe David wasn't actively doing anything wrong to cause all these things to happen, but David certainly was a very passive father in the sense that he was not dealing with situations that was coming up in his family right away. He was not, dealing with the situation that happened with Absalom and Amnon, or with Amnon and Tamar, or with bringing Absalom back from exile quickly, or after he came back from exile into restoring his relationship with him. And everything, he was very, very passive. And he expected things to just kind of work out on their own, and they never worked out on their own. And this is kind of the conclusion, okay, that his entire family has been devastated. So this is a lesson for us to learn, that even though David was a righteous man, and even though God forgave him for his sins, and even though David did many, many good things in his life, and yet he was not immune from the consequences of sin, which we see kind of coming to pass from the time that David committed the sin with Bathsheba until now. Any questions? And glory be to God forever, amen.